Good evening. Welcome in Daily UPSC tutorial audio program. NRN gets it wrong. The Times of India. Happy ending to distressing Doha story. Women can make the world better. The Hindu. Odorless, tasteless, lethal. Thallium as a murder weapon. Now the full editorial. NRN gets it wrong. The Times of India. Working long hours doesn't increase productivity. N.R. Narayanamurthy in a recent interview said that India's productivity is one of the lowest in the world and needs improvement. No argument there. But it is Murthy's solution. It is Murthy's solution. Young people should be willing to work even 70 hours a week. That's problematic. Economists of all stripes agree that enhancing productivity is the key to long-term economic growth. Productivity improvement is influenced by three interrelated factors: the pace and extent of technological diffusion in an economy, the quality of human capital, and the efficacy of public investment. That India's productivity per ILO data is among the lowest in the world is not because Indian doesn't work long enough. ILO data shows that the average hours clocked per person in a week in India is almost 48, one of the highest in the world. The inverse relationship between hours worked and productivity has everything to do with the level of technology and human capital. India's productivity per hour in 2021 was $8.47, while to do with the level of technology and human capital, India's productivity per hour in 2021 was $8.47, while that of France was $58.5. Even though the average French worker clocked only about 30 hours a week, even China, the world's second largest economy with a stellar track record of economic growth for three successive decades, does poorly. Its hourly productivity in 2021 was 13.50 $13.53 because almost 25% of the workforce is still deployed in agriculture. Productivity will increase when the bosses, political and corporate, invest in the right things. Happy ending to distressing Doha story. A former Indian ambassador to Qatar describes four ways Government of India can help the retired Navy personnel sentenced to death by a Qatari court. He says he is hopeful they will be pardoned during Ramadan. KP Fabian. The news of the sentencing to death of eight retired Navy personnel by the court of first instance in Doha is deeply shocking and distressing. The verdict was given on October 26, even after seven sessions of hearing is starting in March this year. But having dealt with Indo-Qatari relations since 1988, first as Joint Secretary Gulf and later as Ambassador in Doha, I am convinced that the eight will not be executed. Information available in the public domain is very limited. The two governments have been understandably reluctant to give out information in view of the sensitivity of the matter, as it relates to alleged spying for a third country, which reports say is Israel. The Indians were working for an Oman headquartered Doha-based company that was working closely with the Qatar Navy for skill upgradation. Specifically, it was assisting on an Italian midget submarine with stealth properties. After the eight were arrested on August 30 last year, consular access was given to the Indian embassy upon request. After a few weeks, the accused were kept in solitary confinement for a while. Families got access later. The ambassador and his deputy had their latest meeting with the accused on October 1 this year. India has four options to appeal to pursue the matter at the diplomatic level, to pursue it at a summit level and build up international support, and if everything else fails, to go to the International Court of Justice. In the case of Kulbhushan Jadhav, an ex-naval officer sentenced to death in Pakistan, the matter was taken up as ICJ. Pakistan has not released Jadhav, but the death sentence has not been carried out either. The fourth option I would not advise. The first two options India will definitely pursue. Qatar has a justice system which Qatar has a justice system where a superior court does modify the harsher verdicts given by lower courts. For example, in 2015, a Philippine national's death sentence was reduced to life imprisonment by the Court of Appeal. That too was a case of espionage involving three Filipinos, two working for Qatar Air Force and one for Qatar General Petroleum. In the present case, it will be prudent for India to formally approach Qatar's ruler, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, as early as appropriate. When the families has sought pardon from the Emir before the verdict, there was no case for pardon. A formal request for pardon from India now will naturally be considered in the context of bilateral relations. India is a large importer of LNG, and Qatar accounts for 40% of India's imports. Its other exports to India are ethylene, propylene, ammonia, urea, polyethylene, to name just a few. Bilateral trade was at $15.03 billion in 2021-22, with Qatar's export to India at $13.19 billion. Over 6,000 Indian companies are operating in Qatar. There are also about 8 lakh Indian nationals there. Many Indian professionals such as doctors, engineers and managers contribute significantly to Qatar's economy. Qatar Invest Authority is planning to open an office in India. There are splendid opportunities to further enlarge the economic relations. There are areas where India is strong, such as pharma products, where Qatar imports 90% of its meat. Qatar has contributed significantly to resolving international disputes. It brokered the US-Taliban agreement leading to the US withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. It is engaged in negotiation for the release of over 2,000 Israeli hostages held by Hamas. Recently, when Washington wanted to release $6 billion frozen by IT belonging to Iran as part of a deal for exchange of detained nationals, Qatar was involved. Qatar handled with considerable diplomatic fines the blockade imposed on it by Saudi Arabia and UAE. Qatar also recognizes the rising profile of India under PM Modi, who visited Qatar in 2016. The Emir had paid a state visit to India in 2015. Considering the mutually beneficial bilateral relations, I am confident that the Emir will favorably consider any request for pardon from India. It is customary in Islamic states to grant pardon during the holy month of Ramadan. Fortunately, in Qatar, a request for pardon does not entail a long red tape. The Emir's office recommends a decision. Plus, Qatar does not have a tradition of carrying out execution as regularly as some of its neighbors. The last execution, according to Amnesty International, was in 2021 of a Nepali migrant worker who knifed to death a Qatari. Until then, there has been no execution for 20 years. Apart from a formal request for pardon, India may look at a summit level meeting between Modi and the email. Finally, I am hopeful to good news by April 2024, the next Eid. Women can make the world better. The Hindu. The global male-dominated, money-driven system of institutions of business and society needs an overhaul. Arun Maira is the author of Shaping the Future: How to Be Think the and Act in the New World. Economic history has long been chronicled through a male lens, emphasizing the contributions of men and their viewpoints. Just look at the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences. It has been awarded to 90 men since 1969 and just 3 women. The first, Eleanor Ostrom, won in 2009 for explaining how local communities, most of them in developing countries, govern themselves. The second, Esther Duflo, won in 2019 for her experimental work in alle- alleviating global poverty. Claudia Goldin was the third woman awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2023 for her work explaining why women earn less money than men even when they do the same work. Economics science is focused on studying system for producing economically valuable goods and services efficiently. Natural and human resources are measured by economists in money terms. Claudia Goldin was awarded for her work explaining why women earn less money than men, even when they do the same work. A woman's work in the family contributes to the well-being of human in society. It does not add to the growth of the economy and GDP. Miss Golden's research reveals that women who also attend to the caring work required for families at home are considered less valuable in economic enterprises because they cannot commit to continuously working full time for their employers, which men can. The future of work in India. Pattern of economic growth have shifted globally. Long-term employment in industrial forms of establishment is becoming harder to find even in rich countries. Most employment is being generated now in the gig economy and the informal sector. Even in large industrial establishment, jobs are on short-term contracts. These trends in the future of work are a special challenge for India, which has the largest number of youth in the world. They are finding fewer opportunities for dignified work with adequate income and social security, even though the Indian economy is among the fastest growing in the world. Moreover, India, which ranks 132 out of 191 countries in human development, needs to invest more in caregiving services. Sadly, caregiving work is not valued in the money economy. The millions of women providing domestic services and millions more who are providing care in communities as ASHA worker, accredited social health activists, and Anganwadi workers in primary health and education are very poorly paid. The Indian Prime Minister has called upon the G20 to support human-centric development going beyond GDP. The vision of globalization so far has been one earth, one family, one future. India has called for a different vision at the G20, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one family, one earth, one future. GDP is the monetary measure of only the economic components of a society. GDP does not value caregiving work. Therefore, to pursue its ambitions to become a $10 trillion GDP economy, policymakers, even in India, went to plug women out of their families and from informal work and push them into more efficient industrial form establishments to contribute to GDP. The SDG goal, the 17th Sustainable Development Goal (SDG) to be achieved by 2030, cover a range of environmental, social, and economic patterns that must be solved simultaneously to make progress more inclusive and sustainable. The G20 has assessed that at the midway point to 2030, the global progress on SDGs is off track, with only 12% of targets on track. Clearly, we must change our approach for achieving the SDGs. Many wise men have advised that we cannot solve complex systemic problems with the same way of thinking that have accused them. The prevalent paradigm of public policy is for domain experts to determine best solutions in their respective areas and for government organizations and non-government organizations to deliver them on scale. However, educational solutions that work in Kerala will not suit Bihar. Water management systems that suit Rajasthan will not fit Uttarakhand. Moreover, environment, livelihood, health, and infrastructure solutions must mesh with each other in their local context. Therefore, complex problems must be solved bottom up, not top down. Local systems solutions cooperatively developed by communities are the only way the goals of the SDGs can be achieved. Value the work of caring. The masculine view of the economy is a production machine driven by competition. A feminine view of the economy is a society of human beings who care. Mainstream economics, so far dominated by men, has created a tragedy of the commons. Nobel laureate Ostrom showed how local communities, often with women at their center, cooperatively govern their local resources equitably and sustainably. Mr. Ostrom proposed a different paradigm based on cooperation, equity and sustainability for realizing the promise of the commons, which is the urgent need of this millennium. A paradigm change is required in economics. Paradigm change always require a power shift, which is difficult because people with power will not let go. Money gives power, political authority gives power, and formal education in science, PhDs, and Nobel prizes give power too. In fact, this is the basis of a caste system of power in all societies. Those with the power of money, authority, and formal higher education are the upper castes in hierarchy. They form coalitions among themselves or ostensibly to make life better for the common people who they say cannot govern themselves and must be developed. It is time for the powers above to humbly listen to the people and learn from them, rather than teaching them ways that have led humanity to grave problems of environmental degradation and economic inequalities. The global male-dominated, money-driven system of institutions of business and society needs an overhaul. Women must be given freedom not just to be promoted within male-dominated institutions, but rather to shape better, family-spirited institutions, go governance. Moreover, local communities must be given more powers for designing and implementing inclusive and sustainable solutions to their problems. Without such fundamental institutional reform, a vision of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one family, one earth, one future, will soon fade among the G20's banner. Odorless, tasteless, lethal, thallium as a murder weapon. In Mahagaon village, two women allegedly killed five family members by lacing their food with poison. Maitri Porecha reports on the string of murders in Maharashtra, which have left the police shocked and the village fearful. Maitri Porecha, acres of rice field await harvest in Mahagaon in Aheri Taluka in Gadchiroli district of Maharashtra. In the middle of this peaceful landscape lies a patch of land that has been cleared. It contains three graves, with mounds of fresh mud heaped on. They belong to Shankar Kombhare, 57, his wife Vijaya, 55, and their son Roshan, 29. The area is strewn with the remnants of firecrackers. In this region, villagers beat drums and burst strings of firecrackers when they take bodies to grave. They believe in celebrating life rather than mourning its passing, even when the deaths are of unnatural causes. Shankar, Vijaya, their daughter Komal Tahagaonkar, 34, Vijaya's sister Varsha, 41, and Roshan died within 2 months. All of them died of thallium poisoning. Thallium is an odorless, tasteless chemical used mostly in science laboratories and chemical industries, and also in small quantities during radiology tests in hospitals. According to the police, Roshan's wife Sanghamitra, 22, who holds a BSc Agriculture degree, with a connivance of his maternal uncle's wife, Mami Rosa Ramtek, 36, sourced a bottle of thallium from a Mumbai-based pharma company. The alleged poisoning has left four other affected: Roshan's brother Sagar, Rosa's husband Pramod, Vijaya's sister Sujata's son Bunty Andirve, Bunty Andirvade, Underwood, and Shankar's driver Rakesh Madhavi. 7 kilometers away from the gravesite, the two accused, Sanghamitra and Rosa, are in police custody in the Aheri Taluka police station. Police say that the women, who are distantly related and were neighbors, had hatched a conspiracy to kill multiple family members. Deputy Superintendent Sudarshan Rathod, the investigating officer, says the police interrogate them for up to 10 hours every day. Roja keeps changing her story about how the thallium was procured. She first accused her elder daughter in Nagpur of helping them, and then her brother in Telangana. She has sent us on a wild goose chase. Sangamitra doesn't talk much, he says. In the lockup, Rosa begins crying while Sangamitra looks on. A plot. May, Mahagaon is sandwiched between the thick jungle of the Gadchiroli Forest Reserve and the Tadova National Park Andheri Tiger Reserve. It is known to a moist region. The police are used to responding. The police are used to responding to combat situations. To find two seemingly average-looking women involved in so many murders, and that too using sophisticated means, is new for us. Thallium has been used in the past for criminal purposes in privileged cycles, but it is rare in rural areas, says a senior police official involved in the investigation. Shankar and his wife Vijaya lived in a bungalow built on land that belongs to Vijaya's father, Guttu Ramtek. Gattu Ramtek, according to Gattu 77, who gives next door, the couple loved farming, so they bought some land with their savings and started growing cottons and vegetables. Teak is available in abundance in the jungles of Gadchiroli. So Shankar, who was also skilled in carpentry, opened a small furniture workshop outside the house and employed four workers. He also bought a transport truck to deliver furniture to bustling urban hubs, says Gattu. Shankar and Vijaya's son Roshan worked at a Aheri Taluka post office. In July last year, he met a new trainee, Sanghamitra, at work, and the two of them fell in love. As Sanghamitra's family did not approve of the relationship, the couple decided to elope. Sanghamitra married Roshan in a temple in December. Her mother, Nalini Gawai, told the police that Sanghamitra was intelligent, driven, and stood first in her undergraduate class. A month after their wedding, Sanghamitra had temporary facial paralysis, says the police, and Roshan's family sent her to her parents' place in Akola, 10 hours from Mahagaon by road. She was on a steroid. She discovered that she was pregnant. The doctor asked her to abort the baby, saying the drug would affect the pregnancy, says an official involved in the case. Following the facial paralysis and the abortion, Sanghamitra's father Ashok Gawai and Roshan's parent had a nasty spat, say the police. In April, Ashok died by suicide. Sanghamitra, who was distressed by his death, tried to self-harm. In July, Sanghamitra and Roshan went out for dinner and their 7-month wedding anniversary, when she told her husband that she wanted to go back to their parents' place in Akola for Raksha Bandhan festival dedicated to brothers and sisters. Roshan refused. He allegedly assaulted her, grabbed her by the throat and beat her up. Says Sudarshan, her in-laws too would keep taunting her. She slowly grew bitter. A lonely and vulnerable Sanghamitra found a friend in Roshan's mommy Rosa, who lived next door. Rosa was the head of a small savings group of women. Sangamitra would peep over the boundary wall and call Rosa I, mother in Marathi, says Gattu, who is Rosa's father-in-law. Gattu and his wife had 6 children, including Pramod, Rosa's husband, Vijaya and Varsha. 2 years ago, Gattu's wife died of a heart attack. A year later, when the family gathered for her Shraddha rituals, the ritual paying homage to ancestor, especially dead persons, my uh, daughters started demanding their share in my 5-acre plot. An argument broke out between two daughter-in-law, Rosa and daughter Vijaya, says Gattu. The Gattu rented 77 at home in Mahagaon. Gattu says his daughter Vijaya and his daughter-in-law Rosa argued about his 5-acre plot. Gattu Durga Remtek, 77 at home in Mahagaon. Gattu says his daughter Vijaya and his daughter-in-law Rosa argued about his 5-acre plot. I photo credit as Sudarshan. Vijaya and Rosa would hurl abuse at each other across the boundary wall, says the police official. Rosa told Sanmitra that she wanted to eliminate all the legal heirs to Gattu's property. The two of them hatched a plan. Things fall apart. According to the police, Sanmitra's internet search history on her mobile phone showed that she has searched top 10 slow poisons. Sanmitra wrote an email to a Mumbai-based pharma company posing as a researcher with a university in Gadchiroli. She said that she required thallium for research purpose. Her childhood friend Avinash Tanje, a resident of Buldhana, paid the company for the thallium, says the police official. Avinash confessed that he helped Sanmitra source thallium. The police say, though Sanmitra grew distant from Avinash following her marriage to Roshan, they re-established contact while she was in Akola at her parents' place. She told them that her in-laws were torturing her and that she wanted to kill them. The official says Gadchiroli police arrested Avinash on October 26. On September 8, when Shankar and Vijaya returned home to dinner after a day in the field, Sanmitra allegedly fed them mutton laced with thallium. She excused herself from dinner, saying she had ulcers in her mouth. Roshan was not at home that day. Shankar, who first began to feel sick, visited the outpatient department of the Mahagaon Primary Healthcare (PHC), complaining of a dry tongue. In August, Shankar had been diagnosed with diabetes, says Darshana Raut, medical officer at the PHC. This time, when he gave his sugar level and BP were in control, I was unable to figure out the cause of his problem. So I referred him to the Aheri Taluka Hospital. Shankar's family belonged to the Dalit community and later converted to Buddhism. A majority of the 307 families living in Mahagaon are followers of B.R. Ambedkar. Shankar and Vijaya organized a day-long puja in their house to ward off the evil eye. The family called some priests to perform bu- Buvabazi rituals, about which the rationalist Narendra Davolkar wrote extensively. They spent at least 40,000 on this, says Sanjay Athlawane, deputy sarpanch of Mahagaon village. Meanwhile, Vijaya's health had also started deteriorating. The couple decided to get admitted in a private hospital in Chandrapur, 150 km away. They they asked Rakesh Madhavi, 21, their driver who also lived in the same village, to take them. Roshan went with them. Sangamitra packed a bottle of water for them and insisted that they keep shipping the water. that she claimed had been blessed with jadi booty or medicinal properties. She said during the interrogation later that the water had been laced with thallium, says the police. Rakesh says he too gulped water from the bottle. The next day, when I returned home to Mahagaon, I realized that my lips and cheeks were turning black. There was a persistent tingling in my limbs and a terrible ache. I was hospitalized at Chandrapur for 11 days, says Rakesh, who is now on the road to recovery in his Kacha house. Rakesh Madhavi, 21, drank water from the bottle that allegedly contained thallium. He is recovering at home in Mahagaon, Aheri Taluk. Rakesh Madhavi, 21, drank water from the bottle that allegedly contained thallium. He is recovering at home in Mahagaon, Aheri Taluk. Photo credit as Sudarshan, as Shankar and Vijaya did not get better in either of the private hospital that they had been taken to in the Chandrapur. Roshan, Sanghmitra and some of their relatives took the couple on September 25 to KIMS Kingsway Hospital in Nagpur, 150 km away from Chandrapur. A senior doctor at KIMS Kingsway says no amount of antibiotics helped the couple. Their breathing became labored and their blood pressure plummeted, says the doctor. On September 26, Shankar died. The next morning, so did Vijaya. Unsure of what caused their death, the doctor sent their bodies for postmortem to the Indira Gandhi Medical College in Nagpur. They also registered a medical legal case at the Sardar police station in Nagpur. It was only nearly 2 weeks later, on October 11, the information about their death reached to the police station at Aheri. The police immediately relayed this information to the Superintendent of Police in Nilotpal at the Gadchiroli District Police Headquarters. The Gadchiroli police realized that something was amiss when they learned that Shankar and Vijaya's daughter Komal had died on October 8 and that Vijaya's sister Varsha too had died on October 14. Sometime in between, Pramod and Bunty had also been poisoned. After his parent and sister's death, Roshan has allegedly grown suspicious of Sanghmitra, says the police. He and his brother Sagar, a graduate of the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, had threatened to approach the police to register a complaint. Sanghmitra freaked out before they could go to the police. She and Roja mixed thallium in a cup of tea and in some dal and gave it to Roshan. They gave sugar of glass of ORS, oral rehydration solution with thallium, says investigation officer Sudarshan. However, when Roshan's health started deteriorating, Sanghmitra, seemingly overcome by guilt, frantically called the doctor Imran Noor Mohammed and intensivist at the Kriti Zone Hospital in Nagpur. She and Rosa took Roshan to the hospital. She pleaded with me to save her husband, recalls Dr. Imran. She also kept saying that it could be thallium poisoning and that we could administer Prussian blue and antidote. The doctor grew suspicious. I asked her how she knew so that about thallium. I also told her that uh, Prussian blue was unavailable in Nagpur as such cases of poisoning are very rare, he says. Roshan, who was admitted in the intensive case care unit, had a shock of black hair. Nurses pulled at his hairs to check if there was hair loss, a classic symptom of thallium poisoning. Tufts came out on the afternoon of October 15. Roshan's blood report accessed by the Hindu revealed that he had been poisoned with thallium. While the normal range of thallium in the body is between 0.15 to 0.36 units, Roshan had more than 250 units, but he died before his report arrived, says Dr. Imran. While Sanghmitra and Rosa were on their way to Mahagaon with the body, Gadchiroli police picked them up and interrogated them separately. This is when they broke down and confessed to their crime, the police said. A terrified village. After Shankar and Vijay died, there were rumors in the village that the family had unearthed ancestral gold in the premises of their bungalow. The villagers believe that this brings bad luck. They say that if you do this, you will incur the wrath of your ancestors' spirits, and people in the family will start dropping dead, says Sanjay, the deputy sarpanch of the village. The doctors from the PSC swung into action and took the blood sample of the residents of the 35 houses surrounding the Kumbhare bungalow, which is now called the ghost house. Members of the panchayat says they were worried about environmental contamination from thallium. We ensured that all our water sources, including uh, we ensured that all our water sources, including bore wells, were treated with bleaching powder, says Sanjay. On October 24, as the Dasera celebrations intensified and all the villagers nearby gathered at Aheri Taluka to get a glimpse of MLA Raze Ambarish Rao, who is a member of an erstwhile royal family, being paraded in a palanquin. There was a pall of gloom over Mahagaon. After seeing 5 deaths and 4 people admitted in hospital, the villagers are scared scared, says Sanjay. The police, who have held Rosa and Sanmitra in custody for 10 days now, says that the local courts had extended their custody for another 4 days. They will then move the court for judicial custody of the accused. Both women have been booked under Section 302 murder, 307 attempt to murder, 328 poisoning, and 120B criminal conspiracy of the Indian Penal Code. Rosa's daughter is unaware of the shock waves that the deaths have caused in the village. With her mother in police custody and her father Pramod admitted to the Nagpur hospital, she does all the housework. The class 7 student has not been to school for 10 days. Her school is 7 kilometers away. Pramod used to drop her at school and pick her up, says her grandfather Gattu. He will How will she go alone now? A woman police officer of the Aheri Taluka comes to inquire about the child's well-being. All I want to do is go to school. I will make sure that I finish cooking early so that I can go, says the child and disappears inside the house to finish her chores. Thank you.